Hello everybody, welcome to today's lesson. Let's go over today's lesson objective. So today we will read and write multi-digit numbers using base 10 numerals, number names, and expanded notation. All right, let's go ahead and go into some vocabulary first. So what is expanded notation? So expanded notation is an expression showing the specific value of each digit by multiplying each digit by its place value. So let's look at this example. So we have 294. So I have 2, the digit 2 in my hundreds place. So I'm going to put down 2 times 100, or 2 copies of 100. Then I have 9 in my tens place, so I'm going to now put down 9 times 10, or 9 copies of 10. And then I have 4 in my ones place, so I'm going to go ahead and express that as 4 times 1, or 4 copies of 1. We're going to do a little more practice with this in our lesson, but here's a general overview of what is expanded notation. Sorry, guys. Okay, and then what is word form? So word form is another way that we can represent a number, but it is a way of showing a number using words instead of digits. So we usually see a number represented in digits, like 642, but in this case, with word form, we're going to write 600, the word, and 42. All right. Now, standard form. So standard form is the most common way to write a number and is a number shown in digits. So we usually see numbers written like this: 37, 4, 985. All of these are just the common way that we see numbers written. All right, so now let's go ahead and get into our lesson. So what we're going to do is we are going to represent 27,085 in standard form, word form, and expanded form. Now, before we do that, sorry everyone, I had to go ahead and make my screen a little bit bigger so we could see our place value chart. So at the very top, I went ahead and put a place value chart. I always like to fill in a place value chart first before I start making my forms of numbers. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's look at 27,085. So if I look at the number 27,085, I can see that I have 2 10,000s, 7 thousands, 0 hundreds, 8 tens, and 5 ones. So if I am going to write this in standard form, I am going to go ahead and write it like I usually say it. So I'm going to put down 27,000, and to let everyone know that I'm going on to my next number family, I'm going to put a comma, so we're no longer working with thousands. And now we're going to have 85. So we have 27,085. This is standard form. Now in word form, I would just type everything out. So it would be 27,085. So we would just write it in words instead of numbers this time. So we have 27,085. Okay. Now in expanded form. So expanded form, we're actually going to represent our numbers by also showing their place value. So let's go ahead and do this together. So I'm going to start with my 10,000. So I'm going to start with a parentheses. So I have 2 times 10,000. Now I like to say this as I have 2 copies of 10,000. Right? So that's what I'm going to do. I have 2 copies of 10,000 plus 7 copies of 1,000 plus, I don't have any copies of 100, so I don't need to write that, but I do have 8 copies of 10. Oops, I made a mistake there. That's not supposed to be plus. We have to go ahead and show that as a multiplication sign. That's going to show that we are making copies. So we have 8 copies of 10 plus, I got the next line. If we look at our ones place, I have 5 copies of ones. So these are the 3 different ways that I can represent 27,085. All right, let's go ahead and do one more example together. Except this time, we're going to look at our expanded form way. So we have 7 copies of 100,000, 8 copies of 1,000, 5 copies of 100, 7 copies of 10, and 3 copies of 1. So let's go ahead and put this first in our place value chart. So how many copies, and I forgot a place value. So how many copies of 100,000 do I have? I'm just going to mark it right here. I have 7 copies of 100,000. Now, how many copies of 10,000 do I have? I don't have any copies of 10,000. How many copies of 1,000 do I have? I have 8 copies of 1,000. Now, let's see, how many copies of 100 do I have? I have 5 copies of 100. And then my 10s, I have 7 copies of 10s. And then in my ones place, I have 3 copies of 1s. So if I were to write this in standard form, this is going to be 708,000. So I'm going to mark a comma to say that I'm moving away from my thousands place. 573. So this is how I would write my number in standard form. And now if I wanted to go ahead and write it in word form, I would write down 708,573. Okay, so this is my copy of word form. That's how I would express this number in word form. And then in expanded form, we wrote that right here at the very top. This is our expanded form, so they don't have to write it again. I'm just going to go ahead and put an arrow to show that that is expanded form. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and review today's lesson objectives. So today we read and wrote multi-digit numbers using base 10 numerals, number names, and expanded notation. Thank you so much for joining me in today's lesson. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned a lot, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye, everybody.